Welcome to Washington Today for Monday, July 31st, 2023. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks for joining us today. Congress has started its August recess, but House Oversight Committee members were on Capitol Hill today to get closed-door testimony from Hunter Biden's former business partner, Devon Archer. We'll hear how that meeting went coming up. It's a busy weekend for Republicans running for president. We'll look back and hear what some of them said over the weekend, and also look forward on what to expect this week with Washington Examiner's Julia Johnson. US and Ukrainian officials are meeting in Washington this week about long-term security and economic support. The talks grew out of the meeting with NATO allies earlier this month. State Department spokesman Matt Miller will tell us more in a few minutes.
Any comment on your interview?
Devon Archer didn't take questions from reporters as he arrived on Capitol Hill this morning. He was there for a transcribed interview with House Oversight Committee members. His appearance, part of congressional Republicans' expanding inquiry into the Biden family's businesses. Devon Archer served with Hunter Biden on the board of directors of the Ukrainian gas company Burisma. And the AP writing today that Mr. Archer, quote, is seen by Republicans as a key witness in their so far fruitless search to directly connect the president to his son's various international business transactions.
Anything you can share with us?
Very productive.
Quick comments there from Oversight Committee Republican Jim Jordan during the committee's lunch break today. When asked if he heard any new information from Devon Archer, Representative Jordan said also, yep. And the Hill's Emily Brooks reporting that Oversight Committee Democrat Dan Goldman summed up Devon Archer's testimony like this, quote, the witness indicated that Hunter spoke to his father every day and approximately 20 times over the course of a 10-year relationship. Hunter may have put his father on the phone and any number of different people, and they never once spoke about any business dealings. Representative Goldman went on to say, quote, as he described it, it was all casual conversation, niceties, the weather, what's going on. There wasn't a single conversation about any of the business dealings that Hunter had. That from the Hill's Emily Brooks. Here's Oversight Committee Republican Nick Langworthy on Fox News talking about why the committee called Devon Archer in.
Well, let's face it, Devon Archer was in the room. This is very important in a key voice that we need to hear from on the Oversight Committee to complete this investigation. He's been in the room when Hunter Biden allegedly called his father into meetings. He's been in the room to discuss arrangements with foreign entities and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. So his voice is critical to this investigation because he has firsthand knowledge of what went on. And the fact that we saw an attempt by the DOJ to silence his voice in this critical congressional inquiry is just unconscionable. And even they had to knuckle under and flinch and allow this to move forward. I mean, such a brazen attempt to join the Biden family cover-up by the DOJ this weekend. I still can't get over it.
House Oversight Committee Republican Nick Langworthy speaking to Fox News earlier today. In Atlanta, a judge has rejected a request from former President Donald Trump to stop the investigation of possible interference in Georgia's 2020 presidential election. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution writing today, quote, in a searing 9-page order, Superior Court Judge Robert McBurney ruled that Trump and Kathy Latham, an alternate GOP elector who joined the former president's motion, did not have sufficient legal standing to mount a challenge before any indictments are announced. Now, this from the judge's decision itself, quote, the movements asserted injuries that would open the doors of the courthouse to their claims are either insufficient or else speculative and unrealized, because while the subject or even target of a highly publicized criminal investigation is likely an unwelcome and an unpleasant experience, no court has ever held that status alone provides a basis for the courts to interfere with or halt the investigation. The ruling comes in response to a motion filed by the former president's attorneys back in March, which questioned the conduct of Fulton County DA Fani Willis, the special grand jury that helped her compile evidence, and Judge McBurney himself. Meanwhile, the other 2024 Republican presidential candidates continue on the campaign trail. Here's Vivek Ramaswamy earlier today on Fox News.
The good news, Dana, is that I'm not running against anybody in this race. I am running for this nation. As a GOP, we've been running from something for a long time. I am the candidate who is leading us to something. I think that's going to be the winning strategy. I started at 0.0% in the polls in March. I'm now in third place in the GOP national polls before the first debate. We're just getting warmed up, and I believe that it will take an outsider of a different generation with a positive vision to actually win this election, and that's what I'm bringing to the table.
So look at the polls here. I know you know it quite well. This is what, NPR, PBS. So this is among Republicans and Republican-leaning independents is what we find. Donald Trump last month was at 64%. This month he's at 58%. Now, granted, that's down 6 points. So you know where things stand as of now. However, yesterday on CNN, you said the following. You said, for my part, I stand for the America First agenda. And then you said, I believe I'll be able to take that agenda even further than Trump did because I'm not yet having that effect on people. What effect are you talking about as it relates to Donald Trump? Let's start there.
So, look, I think Trump was an excellent president, and I actually stand by much of his agenda. The reality, though, Bill, is that about 30% of this country becomes psychiatrically ill when he's in office. That's not his fault. I'm not pinning the blame on anybody's feet. It's just a fact. And yes, I'm not yet having that effect on people. To the contrary, we're bringing young people along with us. We're inspiring people even outside the Republican Party. 40% of our 70,000 some odd donors are first-time ever donors to the GOP of any kind. Normally, that number is 2% for a Republican candidate. And so I think I'm the only candidate in this race who can actually deliver a landslide victory, a Reagan 1980-style moral mandate in the 2024 election. And that is what I expect we will do, and we're already on track to get there.
Vivek Ramaswamy speaking on Fox News earlier today. Nikki Haley was on Face the Nation yesterday. The former South Carolina governor and UN ambassador has said in the past that she's for mental competency tests for federal elected officials who are over 75 years old.
We've got to stop electing people because they look good in a picture or they hold a baby well. We've got to stop electing people because we like them and they've been there a long time. That's actually the problem. You need to have term limits because we need new ideas, new solutions. We've got to have a new generation. I hit Republicans and Democrats. We are $32 trillion in debt. We're having to borrow money just to make our interest payments. I would love to say Biden did that to us, but Republicans did that to us too. Republicans in the 24 budget asked for $7.4 billion in earmarks. Democrats asked for $2.8 billion. Who are the big spenders there? What I am saying about Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, all of them, know when to walk away. Know when to walk away. We have huge issues that need new solutions. We need new generational leaders. We appreciate your service. We appreciate what you've done. But this is why we will fight for term limits. We've got to get it done in America.
Donald Trump is 77 years old. Would he pass that mental acuity test?
I don't know. I say everybody should take it. I'm willing to take it. I think everybody else should take it.
You didn't list his name when you listed all those older Washington lawmakers.
That goes for all of them. You can look across D.C. They're all that. Of course I'm talking about Trump. I've said that all throughout this campaign, that it is time for us to have a new generation. Republicans have lost the last 7 out of 8 popular votes for president.
Yeah.
That's nothing to be proud of. We should want to win the majority of Americans. We've got to start going with a new generation so that we can do that.
Nikki Haley on Face the Nation on CBS News yesterday. And former Vice President Mike Pence spoke at a Republican event yesterday in Clinton, Iowa.
First, who we are. You know, a lot of people know us as Vice President of the United States. And I'm incredibly proud of the record of the Trump-Pence administration. In just 4 short years, we rebuilt our military. We revived our economy. We unleashed American energy and became a net energy exporter for the first time in 75 years. We stood with our allies, stood up to our enemies, and appointed 3 conservatives to our federal courts at every level, including Justice Neil Gorsuch, Justice Brett Kavanaugh, and Indiana Justice Amy Coney Barrett. Just saying. And those 3 justices have literally transformed the court, a durable conservative majority that I couldn't be more proud to have been a small part in seeing nominated and confirmed. 3 justices in the new majority that gave America a new beginning for the right to life. It's truly extraordinary.
And here's Washington Examiner politics reporter Julia Johnson summing up the weekend for the Republican 2024 candidates.
Well, on Friday, you had the Iowa Republican Party's Lincoln Day dinner, and this was really supposed to be an opportunity for these candidates to pitch themselves to Iowans, but it was overshadowed by the new charges added to Trump's classified documents case.
And the former president not backing down from, in fact, if anything, brandishing those potential third indictment in his favor in the campaign.
Yeah, and you know what? I think any strategist would tell him to continue doing that because it's working for him. He is receiving a bump in the polls whenever he gets a new target letter or gets new charges or indictments. Republican voters are very clearly not buying what is being served to them by the Department of Justice, whether that is legitimate or not. They don't believe it is. I mean, a new poll showed about half of Republican voters saying that they didn't even think there are classified documents that were at Mar-a-Lago.
Oh, some Republican candidates are starting to make a move in the direction of criticizing the president. Most prominently over the weekend, former Congressman Will Hurd, Republican candidate, criticizing the president and talking about his legal troubles and being effectively booed off the stage as he left the stage there in Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, Will Hurd, Asa Hutchinson, and Chris Christie have all been vocal, but none of them are polling higher than 2% nationally, and it's not necessarily whether they would poll that way without criticizing him, but we don't know what would happen if a prominent candidate would criticize Trump. But GOP strategists are saying that they need to, because if they don't, if they can't just make the argument that they should be president, they need to make the argument as to why Trump shouldn't be. And none of them really have so far. Nikki Haley did venture into it a little bit on one of the Sunday programs yesterday. She said that the legal troubles are too much baggage and that Republicans need to move on. And this is probably a good direction for her to head in. So we'll see how that affects her numbers going forward.
One of your pieces on the campaign last week was headlined, Trump support grows among college-educated as primary foes fail to lock up that group. Why is the former president being more successful among the college-educated group?
This is a group that he actually doesn't even need to lock down because he is so successful among what are referred to as beer track voters, which means blue collar and not college educated. But I think what you're starting to see is there isn't a candidate emerging as a real competitor to him. He has double-digit leads over everyone. And the college-educated or white-collar or wine track voters, they are starting to think he's the only option, right? And they're still Republicans, and they don't want Joe Biden. So this failure to seize on the moment by other candidates in the GOP primary is making college-educated voters turn back towards Trump.
Have you seen any evidence of what it looks like in the DeSantis campaign under the reported retooling of that campaign and some movement of campaign officials in Ron DeSantis' campaign? What does the retooling look like?
It's difficult to say because it feels like that's been reported for weeks now, right? And there isn't some stark change that you would think would come out of reports about a reboot. But one thing I think you do notice is he's not focusing on woke so much. He's not talking about the woke ideology as much as he was initially. I think what we're starting to see is he's just slightly backing off on the culture war. He still has strong opinions on the culture issues, and he's not backing away from those opinions. But I think when you hear his rhetoric, he's maybe toning it down just a little bit.
Washington Examiner politics reporter Julia Johnson this morning on Washington Journal. You can get more of our unfiltered campaign 2024 coverage on the C-SPAN Now mobile app or anytime online at cspan.org. You're listening to Washington Today.
Listening to programs on C-SPAN through C-SPAN Radio just got easier. Tell your smart speaker, play C-SPAN Radio, And listen to Washington Journal daily at 7 a.m. Eastern. Important congressional hearings and other public affairs events throughout the day. And weekdays at 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. Eastern. Catch Washington Today for a fast-paced report on the stories of the day. Listen to C-SPAN anytime. Just tell your smart speaker, play C-SPAN radio. C-SPAN, powered by cable.
Welcome back to Washington Today. Russian missiles slammed into an apartment complex and a university building in Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown earlier today, killing 6 people and wounding 75 others. Video showed black smoke billowing from corner units and damaged cars on a tree-lined street. In a Telegram post, President Zelensky said the dead included a 10-year-old girl and her mother. Back here in Washington, State Department spokesman Matt Miller talked about ongoing discussions between the U.S. and Ukrainian officials about continued American support.
Those talks are going to kick off this week. Those are an outgrowth of the statement that we released that the G7 released on the margins of the last NATO summit in Vilnius, where President Biden and G7 leaders made clear that we were going to engage in negotiations with the government of Ukraine about our long-term commitments to Ukraine's security, so it can establish a military that can defend itself and deter a future attack, rebuild its economy, protect its citizens, and pursue integration into the Euro-Atlantic community. I will note this is separate and apart from the security assistance that we regularly provide now. We've made clear that we see this proceeding on 2 tracks. 1, security assistance to support their efforts to repel the Russian aggression inside their country, and 2, to establish a long-term military that can serve as a deterrent effect from future Russian aggression. So those meetings are going to start this week. I would add that since we released that joint declaration from the G7 and EU in Vilnius, 12 other countries have joined their names to the declaration. So talks will begin this week about how we can decide on the actual details of those security commitments going forward.
And on the summit in Saudi Arabia this week on Ukraine, do you support this summit? Who will attend it, and what's the goal of it?
We do, of course, support this summit. We have long said that it is important that Ukraine be in the driver's seat when it comes to any potential diplomatic resolution to this war. It's important that countries that have not yet heard directly from Ukraine hear from Ukraine. So we are gratified that there will be countries that will be attending this summit to talk directly with Ukraine. If your question was with respect to what other countries will be attending, I would defer to the governments of Saudi Arabia and Ukraine to answer that question. If the question is respect. I'm coming to you. You don't have to jump in. If the question is with respect to what U.S. government officials will be attending, I can confirm that there will be U.S. government officials, not ready to make announcements yet about who those will be. But as the week goes on, certainly you can expect that we will do so.
State Department spokesperson Matt Miller earlier today. The topic of illegal immigration was the focus of another discussion here in Washington, this one with former immigration officials. Here's Tom Hankinson, who's a Border Security and Immigration Senior Fellow at the Heritage Foundation, and Donald Rosenberg, President of Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime.
I'm just going to sidestep a little bit to go back to the enforcement memo that we talked about that Mayorkas has signed, where basically they don't go after people who are just here illegally. And I was looking at the statistics. I think there's something like 5 million people on what they call the non-detained docket, so people who are in the process. About 1.2 million of them have actual final orders of removal. And as Tom says, when you have an order, if a judge gives an order and you don't carry it out, we're a banana republic. We've actually got to follow through with what judges do. And if you work out that there are about 400,000 of those people, so about 10% on the non-detained docket, are criminals, people with criminal records. So they're people who would be, you would think, a priority, about 10%. This is not a technical question, but Don, do you think Secretary Mayorkas, who is a husband and father and has family and lives in a community, does he understand the risk that he's asking his fellow Americans to run by leaving those 400,000 people here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we always looked at cases, like my case and, the thousands of them, that we were collateral damage to a system that wanted to bring in people into the country illegally. And now you see, okay, you've got the 400,000. What do you think they're going to do But the proof of that is all that now even the people that are coming here illegally are considered collateral damage because of all the ones that are that are dying on their way here, all the rapes, all the crimes that are. I mean, he doesn't care about that either, because it's a game of numbers, and the more people we can let in, we're willing to sacrifice other people. He has to know. Well, first of all, if he doesn't know that, obviously he should have never been in the office. I've met him. He's a sick person, but he's not a stupid person. He's an evil person, and he has a mentality that it's good for the country. Maybe it's good for him. It's good for the politicians on the left side to allow any number of illegal aliens into the country. And certainly, if you're a criminal from anywhere in the world, this is the best time to come to the United States. So they're coming because it's so easy to get in.
Tom Hankinson, Heritage Foundation Border Security and Immigration Senior Fellow, and Donald Rosenberg, President of Advocates for Victims of Illegal Alien Crime, today in an event looking at illegal immigration at the Heritage Foundation. Also in Washington today, Acting National Cyber Director Kemba Walden talked about education policy and the nation's cyber workforce.
The Biden-Harris administration took on this task because the world is changing. President Biden recognized that in the National Cybersecurity Strategy released earlier this year. And in that strategy, President Biden charged us to build a digital ecosystem together, making it more inherently defensible, more resilient, and aligned with our values. This is a bold vision, but because cyberspace is composed of technology, people, and protocols, we must make each element of cyberspace defensible and resilient and aligned with our values. Today, the strategy focuses primarily on the people part of cyberspace, identifying opportunities to better equip Americans to benefit from this bold vision. We're at an inflection point where the United States has an opportunity to do what we do best, and that is to lead and prepare ourselves for the age before us. Early on in the 20th century, the United States underwent an economic transformation where an emergence of an industrial might helped supercharge the American economy. A core insight relative to the automotive industry was that highly skilled machinists were necessary for relatively few functions in the assembly of a consumer vehicle. Rather than competing against rivals for a small slice of the workforce, American companies brought new segments of the workforce into the Industrial Revolution. Minorities, migrants, and low-wage laborers who previously had not participated in the new economy became positioned to earn more and enhance their quality of life. A noble vision then, and one we can learn from today. And with this expansion of the industrial workforce came the great American middle class. The gains made by the middle class unleashed an era of prosperity. We did it before in the industrial age, and we are doing it now in this digital age. Thank you.
That was Kemba Walden, Acting National Cyber Director, speaking earlier today at the Atlantic Council. You can see all of that event, the Heritage event, and today's State Department briefing at cspan.org. That's also where you can find this program as a podcast. You can also get it wherever you get your favorite podcasts. And if you'd like more on the stories that are shaping Washington, subscribe to our evening newsletter, word for word. You can go to cspan.org/connect to subscribe. I'm Gary Sterkoff. Thanks a lot for listening today to Washington Today.